Good morning, yogis, and welcome to another episode. Today we're going to do some yoga for stiff hips because I surely do suffer from them. Even though I'm a yoga teacher, yes, I admit I have stiff hips every now and then. And I'm sure many of you do too, and I definitely know that many of my clients do. So unfortunately the hip joint gets stiff very easily. It's just a fact of life that we have to deal with, especially when we live sedentary lifestyles, lack of exercise, but even when we do strenuous things like lifting weights or running a lot, we tend to get very, very stiff in this area, groins and hips area. So we need to do things in order to keep that nice and supple. And in addition to the hips getting stiff quickly, it's also an area where we store a lot of emotions. So I remember from my teacher training and also many classes that I've taught that whenever we did hip openers, people start crying all of a sudden out of nowhere. And it is because the body stores emotions. There's a lot of things that we can't deal with in our conscious mind. It gets stored in the body and in our subconscious. And the hips are really an area of sadness, trauma, unresolved resentments, anger, all sorts of stuff gets stuck here. So when we do yoga, we actually work on releasing those issues without having to talk about them and go to a psychiatrist or psychologist or God knows what, get a life coach. So it's actually a great way to work through some emotional issues that we might have in life as well. So let's start with some basic exercises for hip opening. When I start a yoga class, I always start with letting my clients just do a gentle opening, so the sitting or the meditation or the breathing exercises are easier, because even when we sit in a normal cross-leg position or lotus or half lotus, sometimes after 5-10 minutes we get very annoyed with this area. So we want to make it easy and nice and soft and smooth in order to sit for a little while without getting disturbed. So a nice exercise to do is to cross the lower legs in a 90-degree angle. You really want to walk the feet to the outer edges of the mat and then really feel the sitting bones digging down into the floor. Place the fingertips behind you, rolling the shoulder heads out and away from the ears, and then you can press the fingers into the floor and lift the spine up, and you will feel the chest lifting as well. Nice open chest. Now the spine should be fully elongated, straight, going up towards the ceiling, so no bending in the spine. And then from there we're going to slowly come forward, walk the hands forward, the knees will move slightly to the floor, but you try to keep the spine as long as possible and minimize the forward curve. Of course it will bend a little, but try really to imagine that your chest or your sternum is moving towards whatever is in front of you. And then we can slowly fold forward. Pressing the fingertips in the floor will help you to ground the sitting bones. And you always should stay aware of that lower part of the body, the pelvic floor. So keep that area active, be aware. And then inhaling, coming up, and then we do the other side, so we cross the other way. Usually one side is a little bit more easy than the other, and usually the side that we start with is the easiest because we tend to have that knowledge subconsciously. So again, pressing the feet to the outer edges of the mat, hands behind you, fingertips pressing into the floor, sitting bones really grounding, digging down, and then slowly coming forward with a nice straight spine, sternum moving forwards. And then if this is difficult for you, because some of you might only be able to reach till here, try to use your breath to move deeper into the posture. So the exhalation is very useful here. It's not for nothing that we use breath in yoga. So exhaling will help you to really breathe into that hip joint and slowly open and fold deeper. So that's a very nice exercise to do, and it can be done at any moment in the day, especially when you work in an office or sit on a desk chair the whole day, which is one of the worst positions for the hips in general. try to do this when you come home or before you go to work, or maybe in your lunch break if you have a little room where you can do something, because your colleagues might look at you a little strangely if you do it in the middle of the, what's it called, the middle of the office. Second exercise, if this was easy for you, we can go a little deeper into the hip opening, and we do that by keeping the legs again in a 90-degree angle, but this time we lift the right foot and we place it on the left knee, and the right knee comes above the left foot, so you're sort of squaring the legs, and this one is a little bit more intense. Now if you feel that the knee can touch the foot already, you can slowly lean forward. The very important here is that you keep pressing the ankle or the heel away, so that you don't, you should have a very active foot here, yeah? So keep that ankle protected by keeping the foot active, pulling the toes up and pressing the heel away, and same goes for the lower foot. And then coming slowly forward and leaning into that position. Again, using the exhalation to go deeper, because you will feel this for sure. Unless you are a true yogi, you will feel this one. And it's very normal if your knee doesn't, well, it's common if your knee doesn't reach the foot. What you can do in that case is to use a yoga block. So we have these nice soft blocks. I don't recommend the wooden ones, but the soft ones, you can place it in between, or a pillow, or God knows what, whatever makes you happy. And then you can slowly work on bringing that knee down. It's not ideal to press on the knee down, but you can press a little bit in front of it or above it, and always try to move forwards. So rather than just pressing down, really work with that hip and move forwards and down. Because eventually we want to make this movement fully out of the hip joint and not out of the knee. Yeah, bending the knee should come from the hip. It sounds a little strange, but it's true. And then up, and then we do the other side. So crossing the lower leg in a 90-degree angle, top foot on the knee, keep those feet active, and then leaning on the left knee and slowly going down. And if your breath gets compensated, so if you feel that it starts to become difficult to breathe, or you're like this in the pose, it really means that you're pushing it too hard, yeah? So the breath is always the number one guide to tell you whether you're staying within your limits. It's very good to explore your limits and to go just a little bit over them, but it's not good to compensate the breath. So try to be aware of your breathing and try to always breathe deeply and fully. That means full inhalations, full exhalations. Are they the same length? Are they equally deep? You have to observe this. It will help you in your practice. And then slowly up. And then lastly, because there's many poses that we can do for opening the hips, but let's not make it too long because we want to fit it into our lives as well. Lastly, we can do a pose which is a variation on the full pigeon pose, full royal pigeon pose. And we're going to bring the right leg forward and bend the knee again in a 90 degrees, but you can bring the heel a little closer to you if it's difficult to bring it all the way in a 90-degree angle, because again, if you have stiff hips, all the way forward might be difficult. So you can bring the foot a little closer, but again, press the heel away. And then you want to make sure that you're squaring the hips. So you don't want to sit like this on one side. You want to be really straight here. Both hips at the same level, and activate the core. So draw the navel in and back. And the point between the navel and the perineum should also move backwards. And then on the inhalation you lengthen, and on the exhalation you can come forward and again keep those hips equal. So usually what happens is, if we fold forward, again that we roll to one side. So try not to do that, really try to avoid that. You can stay either on the elbows, or you can see if you can come all the way down and drop the head to the floor. And then again, breathing into the hip, in this case the right hip. You really use the breath to breathe deeply. So I won't stay too long, you got the idea. Changing to the other side, we can go to downward facing dog and then changing to the other side. Again, inhaling, lengthening, make sure those hips are equally high. And you can always move the back leg a little bit backwards in order to come closer to the floor. If this is very difficult for you, you can again use a block or a pillow or a blanket or something under the hips to give you some grounding. And then again coming forward, however far that you want to go today. Good. So that's a little basic routine that you can do for stiff hips. Doesn't take more than 5-10 minutes. Very easy to remember, I think, and otherwise you can just watch this video over and over again. Try to do it on a daily basis and you'll definitely see the effects in your life.